Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you're watching A News. Here are the headlines. France unveils new government seeking an end to weeks of political crisis. Georgian president calls on government to negotiate new elections. At least 12 dead after an explosion at an ammunition factory in Turkey. Thank you for tuning in. France has a new government. Fourth government in a year, headed by François Bayrou, is another minority one. It faces the same challenges, passing the budget and fighting the deficit while seeking support in a firmly divided parliament.
France's ongoing political crisis deepens as Prime Minister François Bayrou unveils his new government. New government has swiftly focused on tackling France's economic challenges following the resignation of Michel Barnier in December. François Bayrou appointed Eric Lambert as finance minister and Amélie de Montchalin, former public service minister, as budget minister. Their top priority is to pass the 2025 budget, aimed at reducing the country's deficit, which is projected to exceed 6% of GDP. Barnier's departure came after a no-confidence vote in the National Assembly triggered by resistance to his 60 billion euros austerity budget. The plan, which included tax hikes and spending cuts, faced fierce opposition across the political spectrum. Barnier tried to bypass parliamentary approval by invoking Article 49.3 of the French Constitution. This provision allows the government to pass a bill without a vote, but it risks triggering a no-confidence motion. Barnier's use of the clause led to his downfall after opposition parties united against him. Bayrou now faces the same challenge, passing the 2025 budget in a deeply divided parliament, with both the far right and left staunchly opposed. Reaching a compromise will be difficult. If necessary, Bayrou may again invoke Article 49.3 to push the budget through, but this could trigger further political instability. As financial markets grow concerned, the government's ability to manage the budget crisis remains uncertain, with tensions likely to escalate in the coming months.
Parisians met the news of the new government appointments with skepticism, saying they see little hope for significant change.
French newspapers were dominated by headlines about the newly appointed government, describing it as a team of heavyweights and highlighting Prime Minister Bayrou's reliance on experience. Parisians, however, are not optimistic, voicing their concerns.
I don't expect anything from the new government because it's clear that the further things go, the more catastrophic they become. I don't see it unless there's a magic wand. I don't think there is one. I really don't see any improvement for the future.
While Bayrou's team includes figures like former Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin and finance expert Eric Lombard, many criticize the lack of political diversity.
It's always the Macronists and the Republicans. They haven't included the others. The socialists are not part of the new government. So for me, it lacks a mix. The mix is the whole of France. It's not just the left, the right. It's all the French people.
Bayrou's government will need to act swiftly on the contentious 2025 budget, which led to the resignation of his predecessor. But with political gridlock looming, some fear this government could face the same fate within months.
On the new French government and can it deliver? We're talking to European politics specialist Carlos Uriarte Sanchez, joining us from Madrid. Welcome, Carlos. Thank you for joining us. For starters, Macron's fourth government in a year is another minority government, as centrist Bayrou did not build a broader base than the ousted Barnier. In your mind, can this cabinet deliver a budget and work around a very clearly divided parliament? Or could we expect the far right and the left to bring down this government as well?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that, yes, I see that the situation in France is not stable in this moment, especially when we talk about the National Assembly and with these changes of prime ministers. in so close time. I think that what President Macron tries is to organize a government with right center people, but what he doesn't want is to give the opportunity to the extreme right to take any advantage of that. In this regard, well, I think that the idea is good, but I'm not sure if this government with so weak majority is going to be able to be stable in a long time. I think that they will have still problems to approve the budget and to take political decisions because they are very, very weak, the majority in the National Assembly.
Well, on the left side of the spectrum, the Socialist Party leader said that this is not a government, but a provocation with the hard right in power under the watchful eye of the extreme right. Are Marine Le Pen and her party the kingmakers in France now? And do you see her supporting Bayrou?
I don't think so that Marine Le Pen is going to support Bayrou. And maybe it was also a mistake of Macron to don't integrate the Socialist Party in this government, because if what Macron wants is to don't give power to the extreme right or to the extreme left, and to work with the central parties, to the mainstream traditional parties. Maybe it would be also a good idea to take into consideration the Socialist Party, which was a long traditional party in France, as a part of this government. I would have done to integrate the Les Républicains plus the party of Macron, La République Marche, plus also the socialists too. I mean, together, like in a so-called government of unity, face the extreme right and the extreme left for future elections too.
Well, as we previously mentioned, the French parliament is clearly divided into three strong blocs. Looking back at the summer snap elections now that ushered in this months-long political crisis, would you say that calling them was one of Macron's biggest mistakes? We even saw Le Pen just last week saying that she is getting ready for an early presidential election.
Well, I think that it was not a mistake because the extreme right couldn't take the majority of the National Assembly. But maybe in this regard, it was a victory, but not maybe the most important victory. And maybe what Macron has done is to win a little bit time, but the reality is that the important elections will be the next presidential elections. And we know that Macron is not going to be candidate anymore because in France it's not possible a third mandate. Then the party of Macron has a big problem because there is not a leader after Macron, and additionally the center right and the socialists they are in crisis. Then these presidential elections, they can't be a big challenge if all the parties center right and center left, they are not together. To have a strong candidate face Marine Le Pen. Then the first parliamentary elections was a victory for Macron, but we will see what is going to happen in the next presidential elections. Then you have won now, but maybe you will not win in the important election in 2027.
Yeah, you highlight the importance of these presidential elections, but do you see them happening before 2027?
Well, France is a semi-presidential system, and the presidents of the republic normally they have finished the mandate. I will think that Macron will try to finish the mandate as president and don't have early elections for presidential elections. Trying to have a better figures in economic, better also according in the sondage to strength bloc face Marine Le Pen. If they would have early elections, presidential early elections, I will think that it would be a disaster for the old traditional parties and the center left and the center right parties. I think that it would be better to try to work for a good candidate face Marine Le Pen and don't have early presidential elections. And this is what I think that Macron will try. Win time, save time to don't have the elections so they can build any alternative bloc for France face Marine Le Pen.
Well, the budget,
It would be a
yeah.
mistake if they organize the early elections before 2027, in my opinion.
Well, the political turmoil in France is not the only thing on French people's minds. The new government includes two former prime ministers, Manuel Valls and Elisabeth Borne, with Valls being appointed Minister for Overseas Territories. What do you think of this specific appointment given the tragedy that struck Mayotte?
I think that to have in the government two former prime ministers is something that give to a government, of course, always experience. It's not so normal that two former prime ministers in any country they will join again to a government as just ministers because they were prime ministers before. It's very strange to find this situation. I think that what it wants to give is an image of unity in this government. And Manuel Valls and Elizabeth Borne, they are two politicians with a strong personality and also experience. Then I think it's positive. And taking into consideration the catastrophe in Mayotte, I think that it's good to have a former prime minister in charge of this issue, also to protect Macron, because we know that the visit of Macron was quite controversial when he went last week to Mayotte, some days after the catastrophe. And I think that he wanted to put a person who is Manuel Valls in the middle of him and the people. So a former prime minister, who is now minister of overseas, would take of this duty in Mayotte to try to find the best to find a solution against this not just catastrophic crisis but also political crisis, because the people from Mayotte was really very angry.
This new government may last or it may not, but how would you say does the current situation in France reflect on the bigger picture, on the European Union, be it economically or politically? This is, after all, the second largest economy of the bloc.
Well, this political crisis of France is not something new. France is the second biggest economy, but also in Germany they have also a political crisis. They will have early elections in Germany as well to choose to elect a new federal chancellor in February, at the beginning of February. In this regard, this crisis is not just a French crisis. We can find this crisis in other European countries, for instance, in Germany. But well, this is something that is a situation that we can see nowadays in the European Union democracies, and even I could say, to be more West European democracies, Spain, even there is this instability in the governments, we could say, that was not before. But our systems are managing this situation, and of course, in the end, it's the decision of the citizens who take decisions and who vote in the elections. We are democratic systems, and we must accept that sometimes we have instability in our governments. This is something normal in democracies.
Carlos, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insights and opinions. In other news, the Western Balkans saw two rallies organized yesterday. The anti-government one in Tirana, where Albania's main opposition party called for a technocratic caretaker government ahead of next year's parliamentary elections, and a march in Zagreb, where thousands of Croatians called for safer schools following a deadly stabbing attack.
Protests broke out in Albania's capital, Tirana, as opposition leader Sali Berisha demanded the resignation of the government ahead of May 2024 elections. Recently released from house arrest following corruption charges, Berisha urged his supporters to block roads and engage in civil disobedience. Minor clashes with police occurred during the protest.
For a caretaker government for elections, because Edi Rama respects no law, no criteria, no standard about the general elections. All what we want are free and fair elections on May 11th.
Berisha claims the charges are politically motivated and seeks the formation of a caretaker government. In Croatia, a march took place in Zagreb in response to a tragic school stabbing that killed a 7-year-old child and injured 4 others. Organised by the Preporod School Union, the walk called for improved school safety measures.
Tonight we gathered here in a peaceful march to send a message as organizers of the 3 school unions to all citizens of the city of Zagreb about the importance of the issue of safety in our schools. There will be no speeches here, there will be no banners here, there will be no politics here. Send a message to current politics and all politics in the Republic of Croatia that those who are here tonight are not putting up with the situation, that our schools are actually dangerous to life for anyone, student, teacher, parent, anyone.
The attacker, a 19-year-old former student, was detained after the attack. Participants also criticised the Ministries of Education and Health for failing to prevent such violence.
Over in Georgia, President Salome Zurabishvili reiterated her appeal to Georgian Dream's founder, Bidzina Ivanishvili, to hold personal negotiations on a proposed new election date by December 29th. She also said that regardless of the answer, a second stage would follow that would still lead to a new election.
Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili has announced that the country is in a state of political crisis. According to the president, the solution lies in holding new parliamentary elections. Protests, which began after the elections on October 26th, have intensified following the government's decision to freeze European Union accession talks until 2028. Protesters are demanding immediate new elections.
We must reach a compromise through dialogue, otherwise the collapse of the regime could become inevitable.
Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze, however, has taken a firm stance. He stated that the president must step down by December 29th. The Georgian government's decision to halt EU accession negotiations has sparked widespread unrest across the country.
At least 12 people have been killed and 4 others injured in an explosion at an ammunition and explosives factory in northwest Turkey. Country's interior minister said the cause of the blast was not yet clear, but that authorities had ruled out sabotage. According to local media, the factory specialized in making munitions for light weapons and had been operating since 2014. The Turkish Energy Ministry said that a delegation will soon be sent to Syria to evaluate the country's infrastructure and explore ways to address its electricity needs. Turkey already supplies electricity to parts of northern Syria, but the expected talks aim to expand that cooperation. Ankara says the discussion will include creating a plan to deliver electricity across Syria.
Azerbaycan kaynaklarının doğalgazının, Azer kaynaklarındaki doğalgazın Türkiye'ye
US President Joe Biden has commuted the sentences of 37 out of 40 federal death row inmates, switching their penalty to life in prison without parole. In a statement, Biden said he was more convinced than ever that the use of the death penalty at the federal level must stop. The measure does not include more than 2,000 people convicted to death by state authorities. Biden's decision comes before the return of President-elect Donald Trump in January, who resumed federal executions during his first term. Over in German Magdeburg, residents are mourning the victims of a car ramming attack at the Christmas market that killed at least 5 people and injured more than 200. As the community grieves, some have voiced frustration with officials, wondering if the incident could have been prevented.
At the site of the tragic Christmas market attack in Magdeburg, grieving locals gathered to mourn the dead and injured. Their tears reflecting the somber mood of a community far from experiencing a Merry Christmas. Among the flowers and candles left in tribute, voices of frustration emerged, with many blaming politicians for their perceived inaction and questioning whether the tragedy could have been prevented. The heartbreak and anger at the scene underscored the deep divisions and anxieties within the nation during this season of supposed peace and joy.
Es ist immer noch die Fassungslosigkeit da, die Betroffenheit.
There is still a disbelief, the shock that this can happen like this, and that it affects innocent people who have died and who have been injured. It's not Christmas as usual. It's a long way from Merry Christmas. It's very sad that our politicians, unfortunately, did not react in a way that perhaps could have prevented this.
Es ist sehr traurig.
A car ramming attack at a Christmas market in Magdeburg, Germany, killed at least 5 people and injured around 200 others. The suspected driver is a Saudi doctor with a history of anti-Islam rhetoric. The tragedy has sparked national mourning and a debate on security, immigration and the adequacy of government action.
Wir waren ja selbst auf dem Weihnachtsmarkt und haben nur 20 Minuten.
We were at the Christmas market ourselves and only left the market 20 minutes before the attack. And when we got home, I was already getting emails from abroad where people were worried. They already saw reports on television in France and in Mexico about the attack in Magdeburg. That's of course, well, I don't really know what to say. It's all terribly sad.
Es ist alles sehr furchtbar traurig.
Public opinion is divided, with some blaming politicians for inaction and others warning against politicizing the tragedy.
Bethlehem is preparing to mark another somber Christmas. For the second consecutive year, there are no festive lights or a tree in the traditional birthplace of Jesus, as the city mourns the lives lost in the ongoing Gaza war.
Bethlehem, where millions of Christians around the world make pilgrimages to celebrate the birth of Jesus, marking Christmas without its usual festive displays, as the ongoing violence between Israel and Hamas continues to affect the city. The absence of the Christmas tree in Manger Square reflects the somber mood felt by the mostly Palestinian population, mourning the losses in Gaza and facing an uncertain future.
The message from Bethlehem is a message of hope, and we insist that we must have the hope in this part of the world, in the Holy Land, because without hope we can't continue surviving in this land.
With the streets of Bethlehem quieter than usual, the absence of tourists and the closing of local businesses have compounded the already challenging economic conditions.
The atmosphere is very sad. You look around, there is nothing. We're used to the Christmas tree, joyfulness, people here and there. But no, the atmosphere is very sad, and I hope it will get better.
Christian communities, already in decline across the Middle East, have been leaving Bethlehem for years, and now the ongoing war and the lack of economic stability are accelerating the exodus.
Well, in some lighter news, in the Arctic Circle, the Santa Claus village in Rovaniemi is known as Santa's official North Pole residence and is one of the most popular travel destinations in Finland. In a show for the children and tourists, Santa departed on his sleigh, beginning his round-the-world trip of delivering presents.
The world's favorite gift giver, Santa Claus, embarked on his epic sleigh ride from the Arctic Circle. Thousands of delighted fans gathered to catch a glimpse of Santa as he prepared for his globe-trotting adventure to deliver presents to children everywhere. Santa greeted the crowd with his signature jolly laugh, spreading holiday magic in every direction.
Actually, I think it's impossible to be good and nice all the time. Yes, it's too much to ask. You should just try to do your best, as in all things in life. And if you can be quite good almost all the time, don't worry about the gifts. It's time to relax.
As the sleigh bells jingled, Santa waved one last time. His sleigh lifted effortlessly into the frosty sky. The magic of Christmas is officially on its way.
That's all we have for you for now. Thank you for tuning in and keep watching A News.